Very good morning, Dr. Sharmila Madam. This is Dean PGS, US Bangalore.
Good morning. I'm missing Bangalore.
Okay, thank you.
How are you?
Fine, thank you, Madam. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Virtually, you are connected to home country.
You know, and also my alma mater.
Alma mater, yeah.
Yes.
Very nice to see you.
It's lovely to actually be invited and see all of the students. And, too bad I can't attend some of the talks. I would have loved to have done that.
Yeah, fine.
Mm-hmm.
We'll join, Madam. Within 5 minutes, we'll join.
Sure, absolutely. No rush.
Comedy.
Good morning, Dr. Sharmila. This is Nataraja. I corresponded with you. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
No. I would have always accepted it. My old school. How can I not? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Right. So we are very eager to listen to you. Students are excited. Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Right.
Voice illa.
Sir, now?
Yeah, yes. I can hear you now.
Okay. Good morning, Sharmila ma'am.
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you so much.
I'm Sharmila. I also corresponded with you for the
Yes, it's good to meet you.
So how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. It's good to meet you online.
So we were 2 years junior to you in the college campus.
Oh my goodness.
Ours is 87 entry batch.
Okay, I left in 1989. So
89. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe
I was in horticulture.
Yeah, horticulture. We joined
Yeah.
into 87. Maybe we were in second year when you left campus.
Yes, yeah.
Yes. And we were very happy to give a felicitation after you got a seat in the this one at Wisconsin.
Yes, yeah. It was a long time ago. Yeah.
From Heart Club.
Pardon?
You remember Heart Club days? Horticulture
Yes,
club.
yeah.
Horticulture club.
Yes, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Gosh, I do miss those days,
Yeah.
The campus was so beautiful.
Yeah, now also.
Now it is still more beautiful, madam.
Oh my God, those days it was fantastic.
Have you
Now
visited
I haven't been, but there's nostalgia for those old days.
Yeah. After 30 years.
Yeah.
Please come. Yeah.
So will I be able to do some screen sharing? I just might have some images I want to show.
They will invite you, madam. They will ask.
Okay.
They will ask.
Sure. I'll mute myself.
Yeah, sure.
Good morning, all.
Good morning, madam.
Good morning.
So I
Good morning, sir.
welcome.
Very good morning to all of you.
Yeah.
Welcome all the dignitaries, invited speakers, my beloved teachers, other faculty members, and my dear students. So today we'll be having plenary session talk by Dr. Sharmila Rudrapa, and she is alumni of UAS Bangalore. She has completed her BSc Horticulture program during 1989, and I'm very happy to say that she's 2 years senior to us. Okay, so we welcome you, ma'am, with very, very profound happiness, and also we feel that throughout the Science Week, we are having most of our alumni as invited speakers. So that is the speciality of this Science Week, and especially this year because it's online. So most of our alumni from different places in the different corners, nook and corners of the world have joined to enlighten us with their fields of work. And especially the previous 3 talks, one by Subrai Hegde, keynote address, and also Shiva Makki, and yesterday's Dr. Kalidasa Shetty talk, that was excitement in science. So most of these talks were very, very enlightening. We enjoyed them. And so we are happy to say that all of them are our alumni.
Yeah.
So that is the speciality of this Science Week. And so now I request our Dean PGS, Dr. Srinivasa sir, to welcome Dr. Sharmila.
Thank you very much, madam. It is a warm welcome from your home country. I'm very delighted to see you virtually and also connected. Before the formal welcome, I want to just say a few things about our Science Week, madam. What is this an objective thing? Actually, this is held every year. It's called UASB Science Week and PG Student Symposium. This year, it is held from 27th to 30th September. This is 8th edition. We started this program in 2014. The main intention here, what exactly we here do is the graduating students, both MSc and PhD graduating students, when they are in the last semester, they will be asked to present their work. MSc student, they will be presenting their work in the form of a poster, and the PhD, outgoing PhD students will be presenting, they have their oral presentations. And it will be, all the presentations are distributed discipline-wise under 4 major themes. And we have the themes like crop improvement, comprised of genetics and plant breeding, crop physiology, plant biotechnology, seed science and technology, and followed by another theme, crop production. There exactly your subject, hot basic subject also figure in that. Agronomy, science and agriculture chemistry, agriculture microbiology, and also horticulture, forestry and environmental science. And we have the third important theme, major theme, is crop protection. We will be covering the plant pathology, agriculture entomology, and sericulture. And lastly, we have social sciences and other related courses, that is agriculture economics, agriculture extension, and food science and nutrition, and agribusiness management. Actually, this usually for the MSc students, they will be presenting their posters. It will be for horticulture, this one PhD student, they will be having the oral presentation. Because of the oral, this one COVID-19 pandemic, last year also we did not have the oral presentation. This one, the poster presentations of MSc student, it was held virtually as a part of their colloquium in their respective department. And last year also, we did not have the poster session for MSc students, but we have made it this virtual online webinar on a Zoom platform for oral presentation for PhD students, 2020, and also 2021, we have this. This is a major intention of this objective of this to actually make them to know the other departments or the divisions or the other classmates, what is their work. They will be presenting only a portion of their work, and it will be evaluated by experts outside, and they will be actually evaluating it, and they will also announce as a sort of token of encouragement, they will actually given some best presentations awards or certificates will also be given. And added to that, during the Science Week, it is almost celebrated as a festival of science, but it runs for 4 days. And it will be inaugurated on the first day with a keynote address by a well-known speaker, and followed by the 3 plenary talks. And usually we have the main theme of these plenary talks. The one is for science for society, and the second one is for excitement in science. Third one is opportunities in scientific agriculture. Actually, so far we have completed the 3 days, and the first day, as our the colleague Dr. Sharmila told, it was a keynote address by Dr. Subrai Hegde. He is the director, Biotechnology Risk Analysis Program, a part of UASB program in Riverdale, and he was very much there with us, and he shared his experience. And followed by on the 28th, we have a talk by Dr. Shiva Makki. He was also an adjunct professor at Ohio State University and an economist, retired World Bank, USA. And his talk was on the science and society. And followed by yesterday on 29th, we have a talk by Dr. Kalidas Shetty. As you know, he is the professor of plant sciences, and also he is attached to North Dakota State University. And his talk was also on the health-related food security. And we enjoyed all the 3 talks, and also we are going to enjoy your talk also, and it will be a sort of inspiration for our graduating students. This actually the highlight of this Science Week is that this is virtual. The COVID-19 has also made us to fortunate have our alumni spread over with different countries, and they have widely traveled and they have achieved in their own fields. And you will be sharing your experience and also narrating what are the experiences that can be passed on, or it will also enthuse our graduating students or the doctoral students in their further career or whatever this. Apart from that, we also have the creative Agri Startup program. And one day we have the Agri Startup programs, and this is open for both undergraduates and also postgraduates. And we will identify the innovative concepts for the startup programs. They will also be actually evaluated by a representative, a jury from a business entrepreneur, and from academic institute, and also from the policymakers. They will be actually recommending them, they're appreciating their concept note and their creativity, and towards the agri-business entrepreneurship. and it will also help them to get the funding for their project. With this main intention, we have organized the science program for 4 days. And this time, this is today, it is your day, madam. And I could also make out from your biodata that you have widely traveled, and I could go through your series of lectures. I think really appreciate, and also the major objective of our this science week is also to improve the communication skill of our graduating students. That is also very important. Whatever they do in the laboratory, either as an entrepreneur or as an academician, they should have a good communication in terms of publication of papers and also for transferring the knowledge to the farmers. This was the main intention. And this was also this is also one of the aspects we are expecting from you. I think our students definitely enjoy your talk, and they will be having some queries and also some clarifications. And you please be kind enough to share your experience and also answer to their queries. And with this introduction about the Science Week, on behalf of the University of Agricultural Sciences, particularly Directorate of Postgraduate Studies, I wish you a warm welcome, madam. It is a virtual welcome, and also anytime you can come physically also, and we'll be very happy to join you. And of course, we have joined you online now. I think now I request Dr. Sharmila to briefly introduce you and also your talk and other. Thank you, madam.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be with all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And so I'm very happy and proud to introduce our senior, Dr. Sharmila Rudrapa. So as we all know, so I just want to say a quote in Kannada. ಕೋಟಿ ವಿದ್ಯೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಮೇಟಿ ವಿದ್ಯೆಯೇ ಮೇಲು ಮೇಟಿಯಂ ರಾಟಿ ನಡೆದುದಲ್ಲದೆ ದೇಶ ದಾಟುವೆ ಕೆಡಕು ಸರ್ವಜ್ಞ. That means without agriculture, it is not possible to survive. So agriculture is the source for all types of activities, human activities. So we can survive even if we don't have other type of sciences, but without food, it is not possible. And also, I'm very happy to say that we are now self-sustainable in food production in all spheres. Either you take fruits, vegetables, flowers, or food grain production, or oil seeds, pulses. So in most of the agriculture crops, we are self-sustainable, and that's a very happy thing to announce in the 75th year of our independence. So with this, I'm very happy to say that Dr. Sharmila, she has graduated from University of Agriculture Sciences, Bangalore during 1989. And currently she is working as director at South Asia Institute, University of Texas, Austin, USA. And after she has graduated from University of Agriculture Sciences, she has joined MSc program at University of Wisconsin, USA in conservation biology and sustainable development. Later on, she has completed her PhD during 2001 at the same university in conservation biology and sustainable development. And she has started her career at the University of Texas, Austin, from 2001 to 2007. She has served as assistant professor in the Department of Sociology. And currently, as I told, she is holding the post of director at the South Asia Institute at the University of Texas, Austin. And in addition to that, she is serving as professor and core faculty in the Center for Women and Gender Studies. Along with again, she's working in the Center for Asian American Studies, and also she's a faculty affiliate in Center for Human Rights and Justice. And our major area of work now is pertaining to society, sociology, gender issues, human rights, and justice. Apart from that, she has published very good books, and the one book that is published is Discounted Life, the Price of Global Surrogacy in India. So now we are hearing a lot about surrogacy, right? So that is a very interesting book, ma'am. Hope we'll also go through the same. And this book is published by New York University Press, and the book was finalized for the Wright Mills Award. This is instituted by Society for Study of Social Problems. And also she has authored another book, Ethnic Roots to Becoming American, Indian Immigrants and the Culture of Citizenship. So this book has been published by Rutgers University Press, New Jersey. Apart from that, she has several peer-reviewed research articles in the several research journals. So among them, the most important ones I'll just briefly tell: the politics of transnational surrogacy in India. Okay, so you all heard or you might have read a lot about surrogacy in India. And also she has another research paper on why is India's ban on commercial surrogacy bad for women. So this is again published in North Carolina Journal of International Law and Community Regulations. And also again, one more peer-reviewed research article is what to expect when you are expecting. So this is very interesting. And this is published again in the one more Asian Critic, the journal Asian Critic. And fourth one is about our software engineers, cyber coolies, and the technobracios, race and commodification of Indian information technology guest workers in US. So this is again published in University of San Francisco Law Review. So apart from these, she has also several book chapters, peer-reviewed book chapters. So they are all pertaining again to the social issues. So one such book chapter is From Manufacturing Clothes to Manufacturing Babies: Economic Precocity and Labor Option Among Surrogate Mothers in Bangalore, India. Okay, so we are all hearing a lot about surrogacy and even test tube babies and so many things. Because of again urbanization and so many issues come into picture here. Maybe ma'am will talk about that later on in her talk. And also she has one more book chapter, Conceiving Fatherhood, Gay Men and Indian Surrogacy Mothers. Okay, so they are all very interesting, ma'am. And also she has several other research articles and a number of 13 numbers. And currently she is working on 3 research projects. One is labor markets and fertility decision making. And again, second project is on healthcare in rural Texas. Third is a comparative socio-cultural and bioethical study of uterus transplants. These are all collaborative projects. And when I tell about uterus transplants, really India is shaking with this type of problems, ma'am, to tell. Most of the women are facing these problems now. So if you go to rural India, whoever is above 40, 45 years, we will come to know that they don't have uterus no more. So most of the women are getting uterus removed because it's not that they want to remove, but there's a lot of problems. Maybe it is related to food or maybe because of their economic conditions, so many issues. So again, she's also into advising the students, and she's major advisor for master's and doctoral degree students at the University of Texas in the Department of Sociology. Currently, she's guiding 7 PhD students and 5 master students, and already she has guided around 8 PhD students and 5 master students, and she has served as committee member for several PhD students. And also one more interesting thing is she is advisor for the students going on Fulbright fellowships from India and also from other South Asian countries. So the people in the social sciences division, you can always contact ma'am if you are getting a Fulbright fellowship for reference letters and other things. And also she is the faculty leader for UG students from India and China. And she's member for several professional societies like American Anthropological Association, then American Sociological Association, then Association for Asian American Studies, and National Women Studies Association. So your biodata is huge, ma'am. I have just taken few points out of your biodata of 20 pages. And I hope I have done justice for whatever the things I have told. And we warmly welcome you for this plenary talk. And now the platform is yours, ma'am.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor. And that was such a kind introduction after you've been working for about since 2001, of course, the biodata has to be long. Otherwise, it's a problem. I just wanted to say that I'm so happy to be with all of you. I graduated from GKVK with a degree in horticulture in 1989. And I think the foundation that I got in my undergraduate degree was absolutely critical for my future success. I didn't think about it as much back then, but then I got a degree in horticulture, then eventually moved on to getting a degree in conservation biology, and then switched to sociology. So what I'm trying to do for my talk today is actually going back to my agriculture roots, but I'm going to, at some level, try weave in the sociological, the historical, and questions on sustainable development. So I would love to receive questions. This is an ongoing project. It's a historical project and which all of us are implicated because it's located in the old Mysore district, Mandya, Bangalore, and Mysore. That's the area that I'm interested in. I also wanted to say that at some level, this talk, I'm a sociologist now, so it's going to be very different from all of you, from what the kinds of work that you do. And I'm hoping you listen to this as a story and that's engaging and pulls you into thinking about the kinds of work we want to do and think about the kinds of impact we want to have with our research. Okay, and I also wanted to finally add that when I was an undergraduate student, I never quite enjoyed ag extension and ag economics. Now, today, my work is all about that. So be very careful about what you hate, because at the end of it, you'll do exactly the kinds of things that you hated. So be very, very careful on that. Okay, with that, I'm going to be reading my article, if that's okay. And I am aiming to do about a 30-minute talk. And I would love to receive questions at the end of the talk. I'm much more at some level Socratic that way in terms of engaging people, and I'd love to receive questions from you. I'm also going to try do some sharing of photographs. Okay, so let's see if I can do that there. Can you see my screen? Yes? Thumbs up? Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm going to read my talk. And the person who's a very central protagonist in this talk is Umesha, who drives my dad's car, but he's also a dear, dear friend. Okay, so I'll begin. Akka, Umesha began, making eye contact through the rear view mirror as he expertly drove the car down the highway, and I sat in the back seat. There are no more earthworms in our fields anymore. Turning his eyes back to the road, he continued, "We have burned them all out with fertilizers." Months after Umesh and I talked about dying earthworms, in 2018, I read newspaper reports on farmer suicides in Mandya villages. The small-scale sugarcane farmers who, according to Umesha, had killed off earthworms were now killing themselves. Mandya district, especially the irrigated belt running through it, is among the most prosperous agrarian regions in the state of Karnataka. But it had witnessed the highest rates of farmer suicides that particular year. This is 2018. My sugar factory had stopped buying the farmers' cane or had stopped paying for the cane procured from the farmers. Moreover, water had not been released from the nearby KRS dam to flow into the canals that irrigated the fields of Mandya. But even if the water had been released, the canals had fallen into disrepair, far less effective than they were a decade earlier. Unable to finance the high-interest debt serviced by private money lenders, the farmers now faced the loss of their agrarian holdings that was debt collateral. Rather than lose face and lose their ancestral property, they had begun killing themselves with the very same chemicals used on the sugarcane fields. While I have no skills or interest in verifying declining earthworm populations as fact, I'm a sociologist, so I can't assess these issues. I am far more interested in Umesha's narration of agrarian devastation. it wasn't just the earthworms that were dying. He was expressing that a whole life that he had once known and possibilities for other worlds fading, right? So in this talk, what I want to do going forth is tracing the history of development projects, broadly speaking, in the Mandya area. And any story that starts thinking about development in this area, I guess needs to, this is a picture of, I've taken. Most of the photographs, by the way, are ones I've taken. This is a picture of the, devastation of the fields that we'd seen in Mandya, 1918, very, very dry. But any talk, as I said, that we want to talk about Mandya's, Bangalore or Mysore, I would say these districts, we have to go back to talk about the famine, right? But you might ask, what is this famine? Where, when, how? This is the 1876-1878 South Indian famine. A raise of hands. How many of you have heard about this famine? Anyone? 1876, 1878 famine? Anyone? No?
Yes, we know. Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. Between 1876 and 1878, the South Indian Peninsula experienced a famine that, even by disaster-ridden 18th and 19th century colonial Indian standards, was unprecedented in its devastation. By 1879, anywhere from 5.5 to 10 million people were dead across Bombay and Madras presidencies and the princely states of Mysore and Hyderabad. According to some estimates, Mysore lost 20% of its population in those 2 years, right? The Bangalore, Mandya, Mysore districts were under differential colonial and princely state administrations, and they were particularly hit hard. Situated in a dry agrarian zone, these villages typically received only 20 to 35 inches of rain annually, and a delay or failure of the annual monsoons could be devastating. So let me trace a little bit about history about the famine. In 1874, rainfall in Bangalore, Mandya, Mysore districts was unseasonably heavy at 43 inches. Remember, it's 10 inches more than what was generally expected. Farmers' storage pits where ragi was stored was flooded, depleting a staple source of starch for the population. The following year, however, with just 22 inches of rain distributed unseasonably over the year, crops withered, and farmers petitioned the British government and also the Mysore Maharajas petitioned for relief from land taxes. The monsoons failed again in 1876, 2 years of monsoon failure. By then, villages were in acute distress. Merchants had started hoarding grain reserves, resulting in extraordinarily high food prices that exacerbated food shortages. Frederick Goodall, a contemporary observer, wrote that the first to be affected were landless laborers who arrived at the soup kitchens in Bangalore. And let me show an image. This is people waiting for relief, right? This is supposed to be in Bangalore, and I'm simply not sure where in Bangalore this is, but these are sketches that we see, right? So what does Goodall say? The very first people to be affected were landless laborers who arrived at the soup kitchens organized in the cities of Bangalore and Mysore. Subsequently, village artisans were affected. And here open quotes, this is what Goodall says. The weaver had to put away his loom. The barber's razor could not be employed, right? The last to leave the villages were the farmers. On every road of the affected districts, hundreds lay dead by the wayside, right? Entire villages were emptied out and depopulated. In order to relieve population pressures and diseases spreading in Bangalore, remember Bangalore is highly populated at that point in time, and you don't want people coming in as much because you're worried really about the cantonment area and the British would settle there and infections for them. So Entire villages were emptied out, and in order to relieve population pressures and diseases from spreading in Bangalore, 4 miles from outside the main part of the city on Old Madras Road, right, a relief camp was set in place to stop the hungry masses from coming into town, right? That, however, was ineffective because they still came in. William Digby, Secretary for the Indian Famine Relief, wrote that in Bangalore, whichever way the eye turned, dead bodies were to be seen. When troops were marched to the shooting butts for rifle practice, the soldiers were horrified with the sights of bodies of men, women, and children lying exposed and partly devoured by dogs and jackals. The 1876, and when I talk about this famine, I still feel a kind of horror, and seeing the images is actually incredibly, incredibly poignant. Even though it's more than 100 years ago, it's just devastating to imagine what was happening. The 1876-1878 famine was extensively photographed. And this was the first famine in the history of the world that was so extensively photographed, right? The photographs were key to the humanitarian efforts organized by a network of Indian famine relief committees throughout cities in England, Scotland, and Australia. The most popular photographs of the famine were taken by William Willoughby Hooper, a minor British official who had earlier been employed by the Viceroy of British India to contribute to an ethnographic visual survey, the people of India. In photographing famine victims, this is deeply unethical work, right? At some level, you can see it's important to document, but also the way in which he goes about photographing the people is at some level plainly disgusting, okay? What W.W. Hooper does is he allegedly posed unrelated people together, and upon completing his documentation, he sent them away without providing any assistance or participating himself in the relief effort. There is no information on the people who came to the relief camps and where they came from. The rural hinterlands, and by extension, the people themselves, coalesce into one gigantic, undifferentiated zone of retrograde and irreversible depredation, right? No one knows who these people are that are being photographed. No one knows their families. No one knows which villages they're coming from, right? There's simply no record of that. The photograph that I am most compelled by, and this is a photograph that haunts me. Sometimes I'm just walking down the street and this photograph comes to my mind, especially this particular one. In spite of the passivity implicit in the photographs, because the people are posed, they're still, I'm compelled by one of Hooper's photographs titled Inmates of a Relief Camp in Madras. This is this one, right? Madras Presidency, comprising 8 nameless people. 2 women on a bench. These are the 2 women. Let's see. Can you see my cursor? 2 women on a bench with a child each, and another child seated on the floor. 2 men who sit upright, and a 4th one so worn down. He lies on the floor, eyes staring into the palm, upturned at his face. The 2 women, 2 men, and 1 child stare head on at the camera. Right? The woman in the center of the photograph, this person, she haunts me. Right? In my perspective, in the way I interpret it, the woman at the center of Hooper's photograph looks indignant. Indignant. She seems angry that she and her beloveds have suffered. She's angry at being photographed and refuses the objectification of her suffering. Arms bending at the elbow, she rises from the bench on which she is seated to walk into my head, unbidden, furiously asking me, "You have shared my image. You have stared into my eyes and gazed at my emaciated, starving body. Now that you have looked, what will you do?" And this is a question that I keep hearing What is our responsibility? We have seen, what do we do? I am silent. I have no answers. The famine was a humanitarian disaster initiated through the active implementation of laissez-faire policies. Instead of directing food to famine-stricken areas, colonial state liberal policies encouraged the export of food grains because they believed the best way to avert disaster was to deepen market forces. Sell more grains, send them money, right? Money is going to solve the problems. Mike Davis, a historian, he scathingly writes, at the height of the 1876-1878 famine, Londoners were eating Indian bread because India was still exporting grains, right? Moreover, colonial administrators believed that relief camps nurtured dependence among the poor. Richard Temple, as part of the famine delegation, recommended decreasing state spending because he believed that displaced persons employed in public works were receiving inordinately high wages, which attracted persons not who were destitute, but wanted to take advantage of the government. Food rations to famine victims was reduced to 1 pound of grain per day on the supposition that giving them over generous wages would demoralize them and reduce them from becoming hardworking. Davis, Mike Davis, the historian, incredulously is that okay?
Okay, madam, can continue.
Yeah, continue.
Okay. Let me just shut this down. Okay. Mike Davis incredulously notes that the reduced ration was even less than what was provided to Jewish inmates in concentration camps in Nazi Germany, right? These people were getting lesser food than that, right? Though contemporary commentators noted the failures of the colonial state in ameliorating effects of monsoon failures, the widely accepted understanding was that famine, disease, death was an endemic part of Indian existence, and mass death was more visible only because of India's overpopulation. So now the point I'm trying to make is that famine and this death is not seen as a failure of policy. It's not seen as a problem of deepening market forces. Instead, all of the commentary that you start hearing is, well, what else do you expect? India is populated. They have too many people. You can't feed those people. That's why they die, right? That is the rubric that starts getting picked up. And this is a rubric that you see till the contemporary day. Too many people, that's why they die, right? By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, millions of Indians had died. In addition to the South Indian famine of 1876-1878, the bubonic plague had struck in 1896, resulting in 12 million deaths by the late 1920s. And upwards of 12 million people, and possibly as many as 18 million people, had died from influenza in the 1918-1919 influenza epidemic. Now, the reason that I'm reciting these numbers is to actually show you the immensity of horror, right, that we've been facing, right? But then what is the advisor to the Indian Viceroy, Lord Ripon, he writes to him, says, look, famines are actually a good thing because they're a positive population check on the population, right? It really affects only the lower 20% of the population composed of laborers, beggars, potters, and weavers. And although these classes died faster than any other segments of society, Cooper, the advisor, writes, they still reproduce themselves with sufficient rapidity to overcrowd every employment that is open to them. Cooper predicted dire consequences if efforts were not made to provide safeguards against their reproduction, right? So as famines start making the headlines in British popular press, some commentators turn to Malthusian explanations believing that exponential growth in Indian population was not positively supported by food production. The problem with famine was not a problem of resource distribution. Instead, famine death was understood to be an overabundance of people, right? In the 4 years since I've, been doing this work, right? I've become familiar with Hooper's photographs. I've asked friends and family in Bangalore about the famine. No one seems to remember that 20% of Mysore was dead, right? No one remembers. In spite of the wide circulation of these photographs, there is no popular memory of the famine. When I visit Bangalore, as I did in 2019, I look for commemoratives and memorials to the famine, and I find none. There's no markers where the relief camps were. There's no markers where these people were buried. There's nothing, right? You look around Bangalore, there's nothing. I find nothing. Commemoratives and memorials to the famine, I now realize, are modernization projects that were rolled out after the famine. Like colonial state administrators, the ruling family, the Wadiyars of the Mysore princely state, recognized that something had to be done to ameliorate, to lessen the immensity of human suffering. And this is where, at some level, I guess, you start finding the first, initiation of modernization development projects, right? Mysore's modernization projects targeted land, cattle, and people. It culminated, and of course, for those of us who come from the area, we all know this, the KRS Dam, right? So it culminated in the years 1930, 1931 with the Krishna Rajasagar Dam, scientific agriculture, the first cattle breeding station, and 4 birth control clinics, which were all inaugurated in 1930-31. To modernize its infrastructure, the princely state of Mysore recruited Sir M. Vishveshwaraya in 1909. Originally from the district of Mysore, Mandya, where Umesha and his family now live, Vishveshwaraya was enticed to return home to exercise his engineering genius. Building from his extensive experience with gravity masonry dams, such as the ones he'd worked on in Aden, Yemen, and the Bombay Presidency, and the princely state of Hyderabad, in addition to the Aswan Low Dam in Egypt, Vishveshwaraya drew plans for the KRS Dam. But first, he had to raise funds for the dam's construction and lobby the British administrators who worried that if he built the dam, it would negatively affect Madras Presidency further downstream on the Kaveri River. Construction of the dam, so you can imagine the Kaveri waters have been a huge issue right from when the dam was built, right? Dam construction began in November 1911 with 10,000 workers. And who were these workers? Many of the farmers were displaced from Mandya and Mysore, which was once again suffering failed monsoons in 1910, 1911. They were employed in public relief efforts to build a dam that was supposed to eventually redeem them from the vagaries of weather. Completed in 1931, Vishveshwaraya himself described KRS Dam as a miniature Tennessee Valley Authority scheme. It supplied electricity to the Kolar goldfields, cotton mills, and other industries in Bangalore and Mysore, electricity for homes in a large number of towns and villages in southern Karnataka, irrigation for an additional 100,000 acres of land, which led to the extensive cultivation of sugarcane and rice, and finally the establishment of the Mysore sugar mill, which was one of the largest mills of its kind in India at that point in time. It's one thing I need to tell you is 1930, when this dam is built and there's electricity in rural parts of the Mysore district and Bangalore, rural Bangalore, Mandya, villages in this part of India had electricity before so many rural parts of Texas, where I now live today, had electricity, right? So let's not, when we're thinking about backwardness and all of that, let's be a little bit more careful, because we had far better levels of development in 1930, 1935. Not in other parts of India, but certainly under the princely state, under the Vodiyar. Right? If the KRS dam was to fulfill its potential, it had to be accompanied with other modernizing interventions. Here's the dam finally, just 1930s, right? If the KRS dam was to fulfill its potential, it had to be accompanied with other modernizing interventions, including converting masses of tradition-bound peasants into forward-thinking farmers who practiced scientific agriculture and robustly participated in land and agricultural markets. Princely state officials perceived villagers as having irrational attachments to estates acquired by ancestors. For agriculture to be modernized, farmers had to be taught to see land as an asset that could be bought and sold and use that cash for other productive activities. Similarly, they were urged to be rational about their fruit trees and livestock. The farmer needed to learn, Krishna Raja Wadiyar IV, the Raja of Mysore, maintained the lesson of selection. He had to understand that it pays him better to feed one good cow than two poor ones. Where he learns to select his seed, his poultry, his fruit trees, and his implements, we shall be one great step forward on the road of rural reconstruction. A cattle breeding station was established in 1930 to scientifically breed bulls for the benefit of the farmers. The newly minted Department of Agriculture recommended replacing scrub cattle with a carefully cultivated breed, the Amrit Mahal. Thus, it was not quantity that mattered anymore, but it was quality. And that quality was to be achieved through modern scientific method. Ideas of science pervaded not just agricultural and industrial practices, but also human reproduction. Diwan Rangachalru, chief minister of the Mysore princely state, tied overpopulation to hampering production. In his very first address to the Mysore State Representative Assembly in 1881, right? By 1933, birth control clinics were established in the towns of Bangalore, Mandya, and Mysore, making the Mysore government the first government in the world to sponsor birth control clinics. These birth control clinics were not standalone buildings, were accommodated in larger government hospitals. Vani Vilas Hospital in Bangalore actually was one of the first birth control clinics in the world that is government sponsored, right? Given the rubric of selection in all aspects of life, it should come as no surprise that the history of birth control advocacy in India is intimately tied to eugenics, right? Widely popular around the world in the early 1900s, eugenics was distinguished as the new science of human improvement. Feminist movements, progressives, left social reformers around the world, that populations of people too could be improved, much like animals, much like plants, to advance humankind. The Maharaja of Mysore, given his reformist and scientific proclivities, generously donated to the Eugenic Education Society in London in May 1920, right? Indians themselves were active consumers of mass-produced contraceptives, advised to affluent couples from the 1920s onwards, right? So to summarize, rather than political change, the threat of widespread death that you saw in this region, 20% of the population is dead, was dealt with technocracy, with the princely state facilitated the scientific husbanding of land, animals, and women by modern and forward-thinking men. Now, let me move on. Contrary to the ideas of scientific progress and human advancement, however, India's independence in 1947 was heralded with a series of natural disasters, right? England's World War II policies resulted in widespread famine and death in Bengal in 1943 and 1946, and the monsoons had failed again in India in 1960s. Once again, as in 1876 famine, India's population once again became the concern for the globe around. This time, however, eugenics had faded from popular discourse. Instead of eugenics, we started practicing population control, right? Food shortages coupled with India's overpopulation, the US national security officials asserted, made conditions ripe for communism. So the US starts intervening very heavily in India's population control programs. And why do they do it? It's Cold War, right? Right after World War II. They're very worried that if you have a lot of poverty, it's going to become communist. And remember this during Cold War, and they have the same kinds of concerns about South Korea as well. They don't want this to become like what happens in China or Russia, right? This former Soviet Union. So what then happens is the US President Lyndon B. Johnson actually has a protocol where India needed to prove that it's meeting certain kinds of targets with population control, and then he would release food relief during the famine time, right? So by 1960s, with the support of the Population Council, the Ford Foundation, and the World Bank, India instituted the largest state-sponsored family program in the world. It was bigger than China's. India's was the biggest, right? First large-scale effort into population control was initiated through widespread distribution of intrauterine devices, right? I can go through that, but let me move very quickly to what happens from what is happening in the 70s to what happens in 1975, 77. 1975, 1977. Trying to control population, it's not working as they wanted to. Then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in 1975-77 declares a state of emergency, right? Why does she declare a state of emergency? Political turmoil, a massive economic depression that's going on. And basically what she does is she suspends the Indian constitution. Along with widespread political repression that emerges, large numbers of Muslim men were rounded up and forcibly sterilized, right? And we all know what happens during the emergency. Post-emergency from 1977 onwards, right? Because the sterilization of men, which was actually quite a popular kind of population control program prior to the emergency, after 1977, it drops. The Indian state stops subsidizing vasectomies anymore, and all of the population control simply becomes focused on women, right? India's development paradigm over the late 1970s was neatly captured in the Hindi phrase, Garibi Hatao, or eradicate poverty. Initiated as the theme of Indira Gandhi's 1971 election campaign, the slogan came to stand for a series of anti-poverty programs envisioned in India's 5-year plans, right? But instead, and people have noted this, and if we look at the documents, it's certainly true. Instead of working as an anti-poverty measure, right, India's population control policies were anti-poor people measures. Instead of eradicating poverty, right, these kinds of programs eradicated the poor. Population control was coupled with a focus on increased food production through green revolution interventions. First begun in Punjab, hybrid varieties of wheat were introduced in the 1950s and 60s. Green revolution agricultural interventions came to the Mandya region in the 70s and 80s and were focused on rice cultivation. The International Rice Research Institute, headquartered in the Philippines, grew from varieties in China, Taiwan, Japan, and Indonesia to develop hybrid rice varieties suitable for the tropical conditions of India. Today, researchers conclude that the adoption of green revolution agrarian principles, what might this be? Hybrid varieties that are resource hungry and pesticide dependent, have resulted in the loss of indigenous crops and varieties, loss of soil nutrients, increased use of pesticides, farmers' shifts to unsustainable farming practices, farmers' debt to finance the high input demands of hybrid cultivars, and farming community crises when crops fail and debts cannot be repaid. Some observers note that farmers' suicides are far higher in the regions targeted for green revolution development than any other part of India. Right? So the Mandya, Mysore, Bangalore region has come a full circle from the 1876-1878 famine to the eventual wreckage, economic growth, right, by the Green Revolution, but also then subsequently a decline over time because of the structural adjustment programs inaugurated in India in the 1990s. Growing up in Bangalore in the 1970s and 80s, my cousins and I went on vacations on the mountains of Coorg, which is where I'm from, where our extended family grew coffee. On a slow and long-drawn car rides to the mountains, we passed through Mandya's lush green fields and sugarcane fields, property lines dotted with coconut palms. Depending on the season and the time of the day, we'd see off the highway in the distance, smoke rising in the evening skies as the air filled with the sweet fragrance of cane juice cooking into jaggery. Like most farming families in Mandya district, Umesha's extended family grew sugarcane and rice in field beyond that national highway I traversed as a child. Umesha's father was an engineer and worked in Bombay in the 1980s. But upon Umesha's father's mother's death, he was so heartbroken because he was unable to make it to the cremation on time. So he quit his engineering job. He related to me that his heart belonged in Mandya. And he said to me, just like Sir M. Vishwesvaraya, who left Bombay to return home to Mandya, he said, I too left Bombay so I could come back to my Mandya. He inherited 6 acres of irrigated land, which was quite valuable, and he believed it was adequate to support him and his wife and his 2 children, Umesha and his sister. What Umesha's father could not have predicted were the structural adjustment programs implemented in India in 1990. By the 1990s, import substitution development policies were replaced with export-oriented growth national policies. Over the next decade, Bangalore's information sector grew exponentially, and Mandya's lush agricultural fields withered under economic reforms meant to finance India's debt. Along with the devaluation of the rupee and reductions in public investments, subsidies for food and fertilizers were slashed as high-tech productive activities, namely software engineering and IT, became the economic lodestars in India's new export-intensive growth. Agricultural inputs so essential for the hybrid crops introduced since the Green Revolution were no longer subsidized. The My Sugar factory, which was planned by Vishwesvaraya and built in 1931 to buy cane, had now ceased to operate or operated erratically. Right? Close to finishing up, bear with me. While many towns and villages in India have a statue of perhaps Mahatma Gandhi, in almost every village in Mandya, there is a statue of Vishwesvaraya's likeness with a Mysore peta on his head. Sir M. Vishwesvaraya is a revered figure for Mandya's farmers. He was a local man who traveled the world and triumphantly returned home to make life better for all of them. His statue almost always sits by the village temple, freshly and vibrantly painted, and almost always decorated with flowers for annual habbas. But his vision for a modernized and self-sufficient Mandya have faded. So a statue might be painted and fresh, but his vision is faded. The irrigation canals from KRS have run dry, and the sugar factory, one of the largest of its kind in India at one point in time, lie in disrepair. Studies using satellite imagery and socioeconomic variables reveal declines in cultivated land in and around rural Bangalore. Built environments have increased, and water bodies that marked the rural landscape in Bangalore, Mandya, Mysore have shrunken over time. Young people like Umesha find that farming is not economically viable anymore. Umesha's parents could not finance his education beyond high school. After having worked his fields, at this point, I need to remind people that when I go and visit Umesha's family, Umesha's father and I talk in English all the time, right? And we actually look at the newspaper. Umesha's dad is reading the Times of India, I guess, right? Umesha does not speak any English and he does not know how to read English, right? That's the difference between the father and son. And it's not Umesha's fault, right? It's what is happening. Okay, let me finish up. Young people like Umesha, okay, after having worked in the fields alongside his father, but trained as an engineer, Umesha migrated to Bangalore, approximately 100 kilometers away. Umesha tells me that he still wants to be a farmer, but he cannot support his family on what he earns on the farm. His wife and his child stay back in Mandya while he is employed as a driver for various upper middle class families to supplement his household income. Our paths cross because of his work and my work. He drives the car and I sit in the back seat. As he drives, he tells me of agrarian decline that are inevitably stories of his own family's economic decline. Dying earthworms, no more markets for the cane his family grows, and farmers who commit suicide in desperate attempts to avoid losing their ancestral farms to money lenders. Thank you. That was my talk.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to
Your,
stop sharing. Stop sharing.
Century-old memories and also the pictures, what we were just heard about these famines, and maybe we are not experienced, and we consider ourselves very lucky that even the children, maybe we were all, at least when we were in children, when we were studying in government schools, we have seen that USAID that was written on the bags. It used to come from US, and they used to cook this uppitu, and they used to give in the afternoon. We never used to carry a lunch bags to the government schools. We used to travel 3-4 kilometers from our place to the next small town for studies. So that time we have seen this USAID.
Yeah.
So maybe the present children might not have experienced these type of things. They're all very lucky because maybe after independence, a lot of measures were taken to grow sufficient food for the people, and also with as you told that engineering marvels built across several states in India. And also as per Jawaharlal Nehru's statement, the modern temples will be the water projects.
Yeah.
That we consider them as the modern temples of India. Dams will be the modern temples of India. So maybe with such initiatives, the present day children are very lucky and they have not experienced that type of famines. And it was very, very interesting, and also to see how the India has grown, how the India has traveled its path in agriculture. And maybe this is very, very highlighting talk, ma'am. Thank you very much. And we have few questions.
Do people want to ask their questions? I know you've written some of your questions. I'm just wondering if you are interested in asking. Dr. Mohan Raju has written a question. Do you want to read that, sir?
Yeah, they just.
That's what I wanted to know. Very well articulated talk, and you were surprised, as Sharmila told. I think we were lucky a lot, we were not born at those period of famine.
Yes. Yeah.
So it is really disturbing to look at those pictures.
Yeah,
so,
and I want to keep showing those pictures because we should never forget. Because if we forget, we will repeat it.
Yeah,
I want that woman to scold us, right? Like she scolds me every time. She comes to my mind and she says, "What are you doing? What have you done? What have you done?" Right? Let those images stick in our minds, right? I think we have at some level a duty at some level to share their stories. And I don't know whether any of you have any famine stories to share. No one remembers the famine. No one remembers the famine. 20%, 1 out of 5 persons in the state of Mysore princely state, was dead, right? 1 in 5. There are some horrifying descriptions of the famine victims, but it's heartbreaking. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just had to emphasize the lessons.
Madam, I put a question there in the chat box in the sense, like, I just wanted to know what was the stand of the government those period of famine, or even the king's dynasties. What were they doing at that point of time?
I think the Mysore princely state tried to address it in various ways, including having soup kitchens, trying to have relief efforts, right? The British government was not great. There was huge arguments amongst the British itself. Some people were pushing A.O. Hume, I'm going to write his name, right, was someone who actually pushed really hard, saying you need to provide more relief, you need to provide more relief, and they don't listen to him. So he is actually the person who starts the Congress Party back then to start and initiate the freedom struggle, because they really believed the British would not do anything. So the British interest was actually saying that, look, you need to create markets in food, right? If you create markets, then farmers can grow more food. And if you sell food, then they have money, right? But it actually then leads to hoarding of food. So those who are producing, because there's money to be had. So it actually leads to a deeper crisis, so the British actually made it far worse. And like that person who said, the historian who said, Londoners, right? They were eating Indian bread while this food could have been distributed in India, right?
So British government was not really interested to safeguard the Indians.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. I mean, at first, of course, there was one branch that was fighting, but they didn't win. The larger discourse was deepen markets, don't provide too much relief, because if you provide relief, they all become dependent, right? You just create beggars if you give them food for free. Right?
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Madam,
Also,
so myself, Harnik Kumar, from native, hello, madam, native of Mandya district. Probably I've taken practical class. And I've taken a practical class, particularly the microbiology class. You are fast moving. That time, fast moving student used to call that. You are moving very fast in the department. And you assist the practical class for you. When you was doing a master degree, you are 2 years juniors to us. So that time microbiology you are doing. But actually, to add to this, during that time, Mysore Maharaja, Nalvadi Krishnaraj.
Sir, please enable your video, sir.
Mysore Maharaja. Yeah. Maharaja of Mysore, that time was a Nalvadi Krishnaraj Wadiyar. He actually man who actually sold all his gold for the construction of KRS Dam. So that was the initiation. That's the man who actually was a king of public, actually, you can say. He came to the
he was quite reform-minded,
Yeah, reform-minded.
He was quite an incredible person, He and also the Maharaja of Baroda. The two of them were very, very interesting people.
Yeah, he was so liberal in that way. He supported the farmers. So my question, madam, I think you have learned we have studied very well in Mandya district. I want to you, what is the message to Mandya farmers now? The position still worsened, madam.
I know.
Still worse than that. I think the marketing system, everything, they spoiled that. Please tell me, madam, what is your message?
I mean, I think the one thing we need to remember is to not sell those farmlands, right? I think the more, but then you say, what are we going to do holding those farmlands? Like, my friend Umesha, who's driving my dad's car, right? He's like, Akka yen madli, duddil wala kaili. Marlebeku, because how are they going to put food on the table? I think we really need to, I don't have any practical advice. I think we really need to start thinking about policy implementations of repairing KRS Dam, repairing the, half those canals are broken, right? We need to have the political incentive and the social incentive and economics to rebuild those canals, resend that water, right? Maybe it's not sugarcane anymore, because sugarcane, I don't know what kinds of other crops we can grow, right? But I think the point to think about is really food grains and sustainability, because now we're going to be seeing huge issues with climate change, right? the one thing that the US security worries about is climate change and climate refugees. That's the next big focus. So for those of you who are doing all of the studies and those of you thinking about it, thinking about your research projects and where the direction you're going to go, please think about climate change, right?
Yeah, ma'am.
Please think about food security.
Yes,
Right.
there's one more question related to this area.
Yeah.
India is growing and capable of managing the crisis. Do you think scientific agriculture is the solution for poverty, food, and nutritional security?
I think more than scientific agricultural alone, I think there are technological fixes, but there also have to be social fixes, right? Part of the problem is that we are producing enough food. We are around the world. The problem is the massive amount of ways by which it's not in balance, right? There's maldistribution of food. If you were to only distribute it better, I have my colleagues who are an economist and a demographer. They have actually documented that caloric intake in India has actually dropped over the past decade, right? People are actually consuming fewer calories than before, right? So I think this is not a technological fix in terms of science. I mean, that we can do. Yes, I believe in science. I think that's the right thing to do. But I think at some level, it's a humanitarian response and a social response, right? Can we think about redistribution of that food? Because everyone can eat a full meal if we were to simply figure out how we can redistribute it. I think, you know,
Madam.
technologically we can fix it, but socially it's much harder.
Yeah. It's being done to some extent through public distribution system, PDS.
Yeah.
They distribute some food materials, grains and other things for the poor who are below poverty line. It's being done. And as on date, we don't see anybody begging for food, ma'am, in India.
But caloric intake has dropped. And caloric intake has dropped. That's I can send articles on that, right? We need to address it. Those, especially of us who are upper middle class, it almost feels immoral, right? The kind of food wastage and such that goes on.
Wastage is
and even in this country, not just there. I mean, the amount of food we throw every single day is disgusting.
that is there. That is there.
It's
and
wrong.
One more question. So,
Sharmila madam.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is Dr. Angadi.
Yes, sir.
Speaking. I gone back into memories.
Yes, please, sir.
I gone back into memories, listening your maybe topic or your.
Sir, please enable your video, sir.
Yes, sir. There is some bit of lapses or gap here, sir. It is not clearly visible. That is why I put it off.
Okay.
So as I said, sir, Madam Sharmila, I am also the product, meaning BSc Agri from the Harvard campus, MSc and PhD. MSc, when you are doing your degree, BSc Horticulture, I was doing my MSc there in GKVK.
Yes.
MSc and PhD I did there at GKVK only, but yeah, that's how I gone back to memories. I was unable to control. I in fact intervened. Madam was asking some question, but still I controlled and I could unable to control to interact with you. Just to come back to your topic, your horticulture graduate turned into sociologist.
Yes.
That is wonderful. I think Dr. Bhimu Patil, you must be knowing there. Dr. Bhimu Patil.
No.
There in Texas, A&M. Okay, fine. But my question is, how to keep the rather ongoing crisis? There is a gap between the generation like you and me and the younger generation, because there is biggest gap and vacuum is creating year by year. Maybe in terms of within the year or year by year, there is biggest gap in terms. I just quote one example: food habit. Only one. I take one example. maybe there are several such issues, social issues. Food habit, pizza, burger. No one will eat roti. No one will go for ragi. So in near future, my own daughter and son, unless I and my wife insist, they will forget. We will forget all our tradition. So can there any solution for this to restrict or retain back our social life?
I think at some level, I hate the idea of these fast foods. They are horrible for health and horrible for the environment and horrible for the economy. It's great for companies. I guess, is at some level, I don't quite know what to say other than sort of, grab them by the ear and tell them not to do it. I don't quite know what advice to say other than thinking about just how, horrible these foods are, right? Like if you get one of those McDonald's burgers and you keep that bread, right? It doesn't rot. How can food not rot? If it's not rotting, there's something wrong with that food, right?
Yes.
It should not
be
be
digested
eaten.
then. What are the impacts on the human health?
On the human health, not just the environment, right? Food needs to rot after some time, right? If it's not, then you shouldn't be eating it. It's like plastic. Plastic doesn't rot, right? So,
No,
I mean,
my question is, when it cannot rot, one can imagine what would be the situation in our intestine.
Exactly.
How it would be digested. What are all the unwanted things will be synthesized in our system?
Yeah, I think we should really at some level think about eating local, right? Eating things that are in season, right? Thinking about sustainable kinds of agricultural projects, right? I mean, I know it's hard because all of us are being trained scientifically.
So thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot, madam. Thank you very much.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. It's so delightful
one more
to see
question,
everyone.
ma'am. It is really interesting. We saw 1860, 1960 drought or famine. Do we expect something devastating scenario in 2060? And if so, is it because of pollution that mankind has created?
I think it's going to happen before 2060. I'm thinking about the kinds of rains that have been coming. And I'm thinking about all of the landslides that happened in the Coorg, Kerala area. These are all, I think, problems with global warming, that you either have drought or you have crazy amounts of rain. And I think, I come from Coorg, right? And I'm very proud of our coffee plantations and so on and so forth. But all of those have been incredibly ecologically devastating. I think we really need to start rethinking what it is that we've done. And, we may have seen gains for about 100 years or so, but it's over, right? I don't think these are really sustainable ways to go forward. And I don't think we need to wait until 2060. I think it's these climate fluctuations that's going to create huge problems. Unprecedented heat, and unprecedented rain, and then unprecedented drought, cyclically, again and again and again, right? I mean, think about the drought that we had in 2018, 2019. It was horrendous, right? It was horrendous. There were hospitals in Bangalore could not get water, right? They were getting water in those trucks, water trucks, right? Think about what's happening to groundwater. I think these conditions are simply going to become worse, and we don't need to wait until 2060. It's sooner.
Yeah, there's one more question. How COVID pandemic adding to the existing problem and how to mitigate?
I think COVID has certainly made a whole bunch of this worse. I mean, even before COVID, let's also remember that we've been struck by dengue and chikungunya, right? I mean, there is COVID, yes, but we've also had some pretty bad situation with dengue and chikungunya, which are mosquito-borne, right? We're focusing so much on COVID, which, yes, is a huge problem, but we've also had these other kinds of health issues, right? And I think it adds to the existing problem precisely because of, again, distribution of food, right? Migrant workers and what is happening to migrant workers. So I think COVID has really made it far worse, right?
Yes.
Whether it's distribution of food, growing is fine, but getting it out from where it's grown is a problem. And migrant workers have not been able to send money back home because they've had to go back home, right? Earnings is not there. So I think COVID has actually made this quite worse. And schooling is gone. For 2 years, it's
That is
collapsed.
another worst part of this COVID situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, ma'am. Any questions? Any more questions?
I think
Madam,
the PG
Madam?
conference room had hand up.
Madam?
Yes.
Yes.
Sharmila, madam. Yeah, Arni Kumar from madam. Nice to madam. We like to conduct one more the global sustainability probably in the month of November or December
Yeah.
first week. Can you join us, sir? The program. It is an international conference in collaboration with the McGill University, Canada, and UASB. Yeah, you are conducting.
Okay.
I hope your talk will be inspired. I think for the audience. I request you to participate during that time.
I would love to, but I don't know if I have any more new research other than this that is, been done already.
Let us see the past and we should think on future. Yeah. Okay, madam. Thank you so much. Very nice talk. I was learned a lot of things from your talk, madam.
Thank you so much.
Still the Mandya district entire position, worked as a CCDO in My Sugar Company and also in Bandapura Sakara Karkhane also. A lot of history of the Mandya.
No, I would love to do more research on Mandya, and then figure out what's happening to the earthworms. So if anyone wants to do an earthworm study, please, I'm begging you, I would love to work with you.
Yeah, please, madam. So need any social information, today's position in Mandya, I can help you for the social conditions and economics and other things.
That would be wonderful. I would love to. Next time I come down in December, once this COVID situation is under control.
Ma'am, there is an agriculture college in Mandya. There's agriculture college in Mandya, and you can collaborate with some scientists who are working on organic farming.
Oh, that would be lovely.
With that. And one more question from Nataraj Karba.
Thank you, Sharmila. Excellent talk.
Thank you
very,
so much.
Very nice. And some of the pictures what you showed, especially mother with baby, it's disturbing and important to remember that.
Yeah.
So what are the lessons learned from those kind of situations, and how are we getting ready to mitigate? Do you have any strategic way, sociology angle, mitigation strategies or measures for that?
I think what we're doing in US is absolutely critical, that we actually focus on scientific agriculture and sort of thinking about all of the new kinds of developments that we can do. But I think this is why I was saying when I started my talk, agricultural economics, but also ag extension is so critical, right? I used to hate ag extension, and now I'm realizing that is what we should be doing, right? That is where a job lies. And especially for those of us who've grown up in urban India, we cannot separate ourselves from rural India. We need to understand where that life comes from. And we have a moral obligation, right? And I'm going to say it's a moral obligation more than an ethical obligation, right? That is part of the education that we should be inculcating, right? It's not a short-term easy situation. I think it really requires at some level. Technology can be easy, but the social change is much, much harder. And I'm not interested in politics. I'm not BJP, Congress, all of that garbage, right? I think individually we have responsibilities, right? Like think about Vishveshwaraya. I don't think he was really that caught up in this party, that party, whatever garbage, right? It's what can we do, right? What kinds of conversations can we have, right? I think those are important. It's very, touchy-feely and not concrete, but it's that everyday work one must do, I think it's an ethical life that we all need to lead.
Great. Do you have any policy papers or white papers in this direction prepared?
I don't.
Lessons and mitigation measures?
I would love to. I don't have that, but I'm hoping this work that I've started, I'll be able to go in that direction, and I'm hoping I'll find collaborators and people to work with. I would love to do that.
All right. As you just now mentioned, climate change is a serious issue, and we are sure we may have to see some pictures of 1876, 78 again. That would be disturbing. So if you have some mitigation strategies from the angle of social science, that would be great for policymakers to manage the crisis better way.
I will look for those, but I haven't done the research, but that's so critical. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Before I conclude again, as a member of one of the organizing committee members from the conference room here, we are very lucky that you accepted our invitation.
I think there are some questions.
That's great. So back to the coordinator. Back to you.
There is a question, please.
Natras, there is some questions. Yeah.
Yes.
Devgiri, go ahead.
It's not a question actually. I'm not. Good morning, Dr. Sharmila. It is excellent talk. In fact, I'm not putting you a burden by asking question. I'm inviting you to. I'm a professor at College of Forestry, Ponnampet, which was actually one of the constituent college under UASB, but now it is.
Please enable your video, sir.
UAHS Shumoga. So I invite you for our college whenever you come down to Coorg. So it is based in Coorg, and you are invited to visit our
thank
college.
you.
Yeah, it's an invitation, not a question.
Thank you so much. I would love to come. This is my old home.
Yes,
KVK and US.
Yeah, when I came to know about that, that's what I felt. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Sharmila madam, what is time there now?
It is now 12:55.
Sharmila, thank you very much. It is Banu Prakash here. So thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
It was delightful.
And we couldn't change the timings that what you
No, don't worry. This was fine. We need to do it because there's so many people there who have to be there.
Thank you very much from the directorate point of view for accepting our invitation and participating and giving a wonderful lecture.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
We wish that we will collaborate again in the future. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Nattu, your classmates? Nattu? Natraj?
Yeah.
Banu Prakash and Sharmila are classmates.
Devgiri.
Back to the coordinator. I leave it to coordinators to coordinate further. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was just so nice to see everyone, I'm still very close to some of my batchmates.
Yeah.
Sir, so if there are no questions. Yes, sir.
I think there might be. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, 17 chats are there, madam. In chat, there are 17 points.
Let's see.
Shamlama madam, you can conclude that so that we can go ahead with the next presentations because
yes, sir. That's what. Almost all the questions in the chat box we have taken. So with this, we thank you very much, ma'am, for your enlightening talk and also taking us back almost 150 years back. And really, these are very good lessons for us. And with this climate change, what is happening in all different parts of the world, we may have to plan a lot of research areas so that we can come out with some some improved crop varieties which can tolerate these vagaries and which will yield, because we are huge in number. And this will affect us a lot. Even if the little change also, we will have a lot of problem. Maybe we have to take care of all these things. And this was a wonderful talk. So we thank you very much for joining us in spite of your odd schedule. And
no. It was an absolute delight.
Final thanks from Directorate of Postgraduate Studies, madam.
Yes, sir.
I should say good night and have sweet dreams.
Thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a nice day, madam. Thank you.
We'll go to Benner for coordinating for the further sessions on with the. Thank you all for joining this plenary talk, and the valedictory function will be at 3:30 p.m. Okay, see you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for coordinating the session. Now it's over to Benner. Benner, please announce the timings and
Sessions on the main room.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, now this breakout session is about to start. the coordinators as well as associate coordinators and room managers, please be on the main room and get your credential updated. On updation of these credentials, you can move to the respective breakout session. Today, we have only 2 breakout sessions. One is the crop production and another one is the plant protection. You may, as soon as you complete all the symposium, you can end the sessions and you can join back to the main room at 3:30 for valedictory function.
Right. Yes.